Hey everybody, and welcome to today's video. Now today's video is actually in response to two people asking very similar questions along the lines of how to listen to Spirit, how to hear Spirit, does Spirit come through in your own voice or the voices of others. So I'm going to get into that, and I know I didn't do a video yesterday. Both Karen and I, just our energy levels really just not what it should be. Today's the same way, but it's actually the perfect time to make this video because that's one of the things that I've noticed as far as channeling messages or talking to Spirit is that when my energy level is lower, it seems like those messages come through a lot stronger. I don't know if that's because my brain isn't firing on all cylinders, and so it's a little bit more quiet upstairs so I can hear more in my gut. But I guess that would be the first thing that I would recommend, and that's not exactly gigantic news, right? Everybody will say, go ahead and meditate and you'll hear those messages a little bit more, but we don't always have the opportunity to meditate. But what I would do is on those days where you're not really feeling 100%, where you feel like your energy is a little bit low, like mine is right now, those are the days when you might be able to listen a little bit easier and hear things a little bit better. Now, as far as hearing things, there's two different aspects to all of this. There's channeling, and then there's hearing your own spirit. Now, when I'm channeling, if you watch my hockey videos, I'm channeling. Okay, I'm either channeling myself or whatever energy that is coming through me. But it's basically just instantly hitting me in my gut and coming out of my throat. There's not a lot of process going on with my head. I'm just basically speaking from my gut and from my heart, and it just is immediately coming out. Now, not everybody can do that, and if you want to do that, it takes some practice if you're not just born that way with, basically somebody like myself who, the thought and the words are basically, the feeling and the words are basically coming out at the same exact time, which can lead to some problems, but you deal with it, right? The people that you know and love, they know you, so they understand that sometimes you're going to misspeak a little bit. But so that's more on the line of channeling, as far as when you're just immediately feeling something and coming out with it. Now, when you're listening to Spirit, to answer the one question, yes, overwhelmingly, if you're just talking to yourself, your own spirit, you will hear it in your own voice. Now, for somebody like myself who's a medium, what I would say to you is that if you're hearing your spirit in your own voice, be happy, okay? Because after years of hearing my own spirit, my own voice, when I started hearing the voices of others, it took me a minute, okay? I'm not gonna lie. It took a couple minutes, including one particular episode, without getting into too much detail, but where I did not speak in the person's voice, but I could feel it getting ready to come out of me in that person's voice, and I actually had to consciously stop myself from doing that and speak in my own voice. Now, maybe the next time that happens to me, I will just allow it to come out in the person's voice. But it does happen, and it's not something that we have a whole lot of control over. But as far as hearing your own spirit, if you are either in a meditative state or in a very calm, quiet state, and I know a lot of times if we're living with other people, you're going to have to find a room that you can lock yourself in and basically let everybody know. It's kind of like with dad watching sports, okay? Everybody knows don't interrupt, okay? So you're going to have the same type of, setup where if you're going to go back into your room, that you just call it your quiet room, your quiet time, meditative, whatever you want to call it. But everybody knows, don't just leave that person alone. Whoever's in that room at that time, they need some space, and leave them alone. So, as far as hearing spirit and how to determine, what you're hearing and what you're not hearing, a couple of things that I've noticed, okay? Spirit will not give you a message that will cause you anxiety. Okay, you're not going to hear something from Spirit that says, you should worry about this, or what about this. Or, you're not going to get messages from Spirit that cause you to significantly question, what your mindset is. Okay, when you get a message from Spirit, you're going to know it immediately, because you're like, oh, that sounds right. That sounds exactly right. Okay, and what Spirit will do is not going to give you messages that are going to cause you to have anxiety, like I said, or cause you worry. It will tell you what is going to happen, or a Spirit will tell you what you need to do. It's not going to give you what ifs, shoulda, coulda, woulda, maybes. It's not going to do that. So when you're focusing on what voice to listen to, okay, if you're getting those voices of saying, well, what if this, and what if that, what if this, that's coming from up here, okay? A lot of times, especially when you're first developing your relationship with Spirit, a lot of times what's going to happen is those voices are going to speak at the same time. And you're going to hear, what if, shoulda, coulda, woulda. You're going to hear all this mess. And way in the background, just imagine you're in a crowded room and you're hearing all these voices. And all the voices in the front row, they're telling you, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and what if you do this? And those are all the voices coming from your ego, coming from your head. So you're in this room and you're hearing all those voices, but very, very faintly, all the way in the back of the room, you hear this one voice, and it doesn't tell you what shoulda, coulda, woulda. It just tells you what you need to do, okay? It's a little bit of a different angle. And you hear it, and then you might just gloss over it, and you're just listening to the rest of these voices. But if you slow down your process just enough to be like, okay, wait a second. I heard somebody speaking all the way in the back of the room, that small little voice. That's you, that's Spirit, okay? That's the voice that you need to focus and hone in on. It can be extraordinarily difficult, especially in the beginning, and especially if you're doing, if you're asking Spirit the bigger questions. So that's why I recommend in many of my videos starting off with small questions that aren't going to have a huge consequence to you, so that if you start with a small question, okay, first of all, what's not going to happen is if it's not something that you're going to be extraordinarily worried about, then those voices in the front of the room that are going to give you the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, they're not really going to be that loud, because they're going to be like, we're not really worried about this, right? So you'll be able to hear that voice in the back of the room that's going to give you your answer a little bit clearer. And then once that happens, once you practice doing that a little bit more, then you learn to recognize that voice. It's no different than if you were in your family's house and you've got 6 people and you got your husband and wife and kids and brothers and sisters. You know everybody's voice because you've experienced them and you know what their voice sounds like. Well, the same concept works with Spirit. So if you start with those small things, and those voices in the front, they're not too worried about it. It's like, we don't really care if we go get ice cream. Why is this a question for us? Okay? But Spirit will give you an answer no matter how small or how big, and it will just be a point blank, yes or no, do it, don't do it, etc. type of answer. So once you hone in on hearing that little voice in the back of the room, then you can kind of tune into that frequency. And so each time that you're asking for a question, it's getting a little bit more important, a little bit more important. Those voices in the front of the room, they're going to start to give you a little bit agitated. And, hey, what are we doing? What if, what if, what if? But you will be able to pick up that voice in the back of the room. Now, eventually, you do it enough, you get to the point where, and it's not perfect, okay? That's the other thing. None of this is perfect, okay? Somebody like myself, yes, I do get to the point where I'm going to give it 60, maybe 70% of the time, okay? I can pick up what Spirit is telling me to do, and I'm going to know what to do right off the bat, okay? But nobody's perfect, right? So the rest of the time, I have to wade through those voices, and even then, I wade through the voices and I get to Spirit's voice. And even then it's not perfect. There's still going to be maybe 10, 15% of the time when the feeling is so strong and the reaction time is so quick that you boom and you react to those voices in the front of the room and you just drowned out Spirit. So you're never going to get to that point. Well, I don't want to say never. It's extremely difficult to get to the point where, every single time. that you're going to hear Spirit immediately and make the right decision. Now, the one thing that I will say that will make you feel really proud, the thing that you're going to be like, wow, I did this, I got there, is when you're going through something that's an extremely difficult decision, okay, and you recognize all those voices in the front of the room screaming at you and causing you anxiety, and when you're able to be like, no, stop, you all shut up, I'm going to listen to the guy in the back of the room and make a decision based on that, and then it works out well for you. The first time that happens, you're going to be telling everybody you know. I guarantee it. You're going to be so happy, like, I did it, I figured it out. And then the more that you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So, yes, you're going to hear your spirit in your voice. If you start hearing other voices, don't let anybody tell you you're crazy, okay? If you start hearing other voices, once you open up your spirit, you might get clairvoyance. You might get some of these abilities. Everybody has some range of ability, and it just depends on, the frequency that we're on, whether or not they get activated. So those things might happen. Don't laugh them off. Don't fluff them off, okay? Try to pay attention, see who's talking to you. And one thing that I did, and I still do this, if I get a new voice that I'm not used to, I will ask Spirit, say, hey, is this person okay? Who is this? And one thing that you can do if you're concerned about, nefarious things coming around, is that just whenever you're doing your meditations, whenever, they start talking to you, make sure that you just say, hey, look, I'm only inviting in the positive. I'm only inviting in the good. There's nobody here that's allowed to have anything to do with me that has any nefarious intentions. You just take away their permission, and they're gone. They're not gonna play with you. Okay, that's just not how it's going to work. They're not going to sit there and knock on the door. They got plenty of doors to go knock on. So, if you start hearing the other voices, once that you attune to your spirit and you start hearing voices in other voices, just talk to Spirit and try to determine, okay, who is this? Is this somebody trying to give me a message? Is it a loved one? Is it a pet? A lot of times that's the next step, is once you start really communicating with Spirit, your pets will start talking to you. And I know I just lost about half of you right there, but the other half of you are sitting there going, yeah, I know, he's right, okay? So, we'll go from that. We'll do that in a different video. I don't want to get too far off track. But, okay, so that's going to be enough for today. I don't want to make this too long. But to answer the one specific question, yes, Spirit will come in your own voice. And it's just a matter of attuning to the differences in your own voices in your head versus the own voices in your gut. And once you get to that point, you're on the right track, and you'll know it. There'll be a knowing. That's an unexplainable thing. There's an absolute knowing when you have it right the first time, and then you just keep moving forward and just paying a little bit more closer attention to that voice as you hear it, and your relationship with Spirit is going to grow, and it'll grow rapidly. The more that you give it to do, the more that you trust it, and the more that you acknowledge after something goes right. Acknowledgement, acknowledgement, acknowledgement. I cannot stress that enough. The more that you are grateful, and the more that you acknowledge what is happening, the quicker the process is going to go for you, and the more that you're going to be able to communicate with Spirit about especially the bigger things in life. So, all right. We've got more on this subject to come this week. I know there was a few other questions involved there, but that's as much as I want to do for the one video. To keep it, not being too long. I don't know how long I've been talking now. In case you guys haven't noticed, I can talk for a while. So I'm going to shut up now. And thank you all for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow.